Good morning, classmates. I am home on this Wednesday morning because I have a 4-year-old with pink eye, so I thought that it would be a great time to take advantage of the extra time to go ahead and post. I've been having technical issues. My computer does not want to seem to convert whenever I use the media button, so if anybody has suggestions on making that work better, I've been recording on Screencastify and then loading it to YouTube and then inserting a YouTube video, and that worked last week. All right, so I'm going to just quickly go ahead and get into the 4 articles that I chose. The first one on cultural sensitivity, I chose perfectionism in Chinese gifted learners because I don't have any Chinese students, and this is an area that I'm not familiar with, so I wanted to gain a little bit more perspective. The things that stood out to me, first of all, I think out of all the articles I read, this one was my favorite. I like that they talked about like adaptive perfectionism versus maladaptive. So they kind of start off the article by saying that perfectionism can be as a problem. They clearly define it as a problem, but that it's something that you can either adapt the problem to your skill set and learn how to manage it, or you can have a maladaptation. And in that sense, the perfectionism grinds on the student, to the point where they can become depressed and develop anxiety. There was actually quite a few eating disorders, suicidal ideation, procrastination, like underachieving, not wanting to even start work because it's not going to be perfect. So this does correlate with OCD in a lot of ways. So the authors challenge the students, if they have perfectionism, to use it to their benefit. And if there is a teacher or a parent or a counselor, is to help the students who are markedly perfectionistic to understand their own problem and develop appropriate strategies for self-regulation. So just becoming identified with it. So they identify Chinese culture because perfectionism in gifted students and that culture is marked, and but it is the adaptive form. And so they kind of explore a little bit about why they think that Chinese gifted perfectionists are adaptive perfectionists. And they sort of, tie it back to culture and what is considered socially acceptable for their culture. So one of the things that they mentioned that I had to look up was filial piety. And that means a very strong reverence for their parents. And in their culture, then it is they are raised and they're expected to bring honor to the family, but also to their community. So if they have a gift or a talent, then not using that for the benefit of the community and not using it to bring honor to their family is considered very negative. I appreciate that this article reminded us of growth mindset versus fixed mindset, and that in a fixed mindset, that there's nothing you can do to increase your intelligence, but in a growth mindset, you realize that there are things that you can do to grow your intelligence. So one of the most interesting things that I read in here was about their Confucius roots. So the intellects of Confucius are core values that are prevalent in Chinese culture, including American Chinese culture. And because of that, then that is what they consider to be the core of why Chinese gifted students who have perfectionism adapt well. And so they are willing to take constructive criticism and to use their perfectionism in a positive way and to view it in a positive way. I ended this the last bit of the article that I thought would be relevant as a teacher, and that is to whether you have Chinese students or not, if you have gifted students that are perfectionists, that there is a lot of times emotional behavioral disturbances that can be paired with those, and the emotional turmoil that can be that a student can feel from being gifted, and a lot of times the isolation from it. So what I took from this into the classroom would be just to be cognizant of those and sensitive to them, and to help the student in the ways that I've been trained. I've actually had quite a few EBD classes then to help those students. So now my time is almost halfway up and I'm through one article, but that was my favorite one. So I'm quickly going to just review the last three. In the second section of ELL, I chose Julie Washington's quest to get schools to respect African American English. This hits home for me because Ebonics was a big thing in 1996 when I graduated high school. So as I was coming into my young adult life, that was something that was in the news. Oprah had a big thing about it because she was very against Ebonics. So this is a sensitive subject in the sense that a lot of times it kind of compares, is it culturally acceptable versus, Oprah's stand was, if you're an educated Black person, you don't talk like that because it's wrong. And so, her Washington's take on it is that it is English, and it's American English. It is a dialect of English, and to deny or say that it's wrong isn't sensitive. It isn't, and it isn't correct because I've actually lived in other areas of the country, and I've been around Black people. I grew up in Atlanta. I live in South Mississippi. Half my school is Black. I lived outside of Philadelphia. I lived in West Virginia. I lived in North Central Pennsylvania. And although some of the accents are different, the dialect is really very similar among the African American population in what she's talking about, African American English. So so much of that is cultural, and to say that someone's culture is wrong because it doesn't match ours is obviously incorrect. What I took from this article into the classroom for myself was the okay to grade based on the dialect. I had seniors, we're done with high school at this point, for the senior project who were writing research papers. I kept trying to correct uses of is, be, am, dropping S's on the ends of words that they write because it's how they speak. And that was very clearly brought out in that article. And I stopped counting off for it because I felt very similarly aligned with Washington. And I felt like that was something that I got an okay from her in that article. The third one that I picked, Gifted Students and Bullying, had to do with Black students being accused of acting white. And of course, that bullying goes both ways. But in this article, it's referring specifically, to gifted students. And so we have created this phenomenon in the sense that all our gifted programs are swamped with white students that are male white students. Then if you act gifted or are accepted into a gifted program at that point, then I can see where we've kind of created this situation. The part that I gleaned from this the most is just at the challenge that first of all, this was written by Tarek Grantham. So this is the third article I've read by him in 2 weeks, which means that I can identify him as a very strong writer in this area. Self-reflection, bystander teacher behavior toward acting white phenomenon. There's a 10-question checklist. I love these when they're in articles. Self-reflection, asking yourself, do I do this? Do I do that? Just honestly questioning, is it something that I identify? And then how do I deal with it? The bystander versus upstander. You see it happening, you do something about it. The bystander teacher, you see it happening, you let it go. You assume it's somebody else's responsibility. You assume they'll outgrow teasing like that. It's building character, whatever excuse you give yourself. So he's challenging the teachers to confront it in the appropriate way. The last one that I chose, there was 2 on socialization and the other one was really short. And since I had chosen the short Washington article, even though it was more appealing to me, I chose the longer, very scientifically oriented socialization article on the role of social competence in predicting gifted enrollment. These authors looked at first graders and kindergartners and looked at their social competency at that age, along with task orientation, and then along with just your regular schoolhouse intelligence to determine if they would be accepted into gifted programs by 3rd grade. And through all of it, the end result was that social competence actually does not very much predict, but task orientation does. So I'm out of time. I look forward to listening to the rest of your recordings, and I will see everyone next Monday.